The name of the program is Karma Connections, and it's located at South Vancouver Neighbourhood House. We deliver this program with workshops based out of there every year during summer break and spring break. The goals of the program is to support newcomer youth in finding their first jobs. The second part of the program is to allow newcomer youth to have volunteer experiences and connect with different organizations throughout the Lower Mainland.
In terms of the short-term outcomes, it's just for the youth to kind of understand what it is like to work in Canada. So what the job market looks like. So what can someone who is 15 or 16 be able to work here in Canada? Because a lot of the youth come from countries where working when you're a teenager isn't really a viable option. So just kind of normalizing the idea of being in high school and having a job. And then in terms of the midway goals is to have these youth kind of start to think about, okay, what kind of jobs do I want to have? What does my first job look like? And start to kind of work towards that. And in terms of long-term goals, I think it's important to have this program because it facilitates a sense of confidence. So because they've had these volunteer placements as well as pre-employment training, they work kind of hand in hand to build the confidence of the youth in themselves and in the content that they have learned. And another important thing is also to facilitate a sense of community and inclusion. So a big part of this program is for youth to get to know one another, especially because they do have similar context in the sense that they are all newcomers to Canada. So kind of having that barrier, facing the same struggle, it builds a strong connection among the youth that they can carry on beyond the program.
The key features of this program include having workshops on resume writing, workshops on interview skills, workshops on what is a cover letter and how to write one, how to dress for an interview, how to follow up after an interview, the proper etiquette, how to do job searches, and also introducing youth to different organizations such as the Vancouver Food Bank and the Covenant House, and having them be exposed to different volunteer opportunities at these organizations. So we would take the youth to field trips for group volunteering opportunities at these different other nonprofit organizations. Usually there is also a staff at these organizations who would be with us for the day, and they would explain a little bit about what they do at their organization, the goals and the purpose of that organization, just so the youth would have a sense of other different community resources that are available.
This program is always shifting to meet the needs of the youth at that given time of the intake. So for example, if the cohort was made up of a large percentage of youth who are in grade 12 that have no experience writing any resumes, then we would spend more time introducing what a resume is, what to include, and why it's important in the Canadian context. But if the cohort is composed of mostly grade 11 and grade 12 students who already have a good idea of what a resume is, or might even have one, then we might allocate more time for one-on-one sessions with the youth to improve their resumes more personally. So this program is heavily reliant on community partnerships to facilitate group volunteer opportunities for the youth. And thankfully, over the years, we have built a strong relationship with local community organizations, such as the Pacific Pier Park Society, the Fresh Roots Urban Farm Society, and the Covenant House. So this is to diversify the different forms of volunteer opportunities that the youth can participate in that they might not otherwise have an opportunity to do so on their own time. The youth's relationship with one another also contributes to the program's success. So in this program, the youth typically spend around 30 to 36 hours together over the span of 2 weeks. So they learn, volunteer, and grow together, and thus it fosters a sense of inclusion, which is very, very important. Because of this, I've implemented daily team building activities where the youth get the opportunity to work with one another, not necessarily with their friends that they have joined the program with, but also the broader network of their peers that are in the program, and to continue fostering that relationship even after the program ends. One of the challenges that we faced, especially during the pandemic, is finding community partners that are willing to have a group of youth under the age of 18 come into their organization and volunteer with them. to combat that barrier, and because thankfully we've had these pre-established strong relationships with some community partners, the Covenant House, for example, which was not allowing any volunteers or non-essential staff into their building, we were able to volunteer remotely. So the Covenant House gave us the supplies, and then the youth were responsible for designing different care packages for at-risk youth to that have access to the Covenant House. And then we also participated in the Great Canadian Shoreline Cleanup, which is kind of an independent volunteer opportunity that any organization can just sign up for. And because of the pandemic, we had to continuously change how the program is being delivered to not only comply with provincial health orders, but to fit the need of the youth who are starting to look for employment. So this included having hybrid programming where the youth had one-on-one appointments with settlement counselor or the employment counselor at SVNH to look over the resumes. And then we had online mock interviews. And of course, for online sessions, we had to shorten them to recognize the screen fatigue that many of the youth were facing because school was also online. So because of the pandemic, we were able to see how we can diversify the ways that we can deliver the same content, but just through different mediums. I have kind of like a 3-stage method of getting the evaluation. So in the start of the program, the youth fill out a goal setting worksheet. So this is to gauge what the youth's program expectations are, what skills that they want to work on, what goals that they hope to accomplish. And then this is taken into consideration throughout the program's implementation. And then throughout the program, I collect verbal feedback from youth, what they liked, what they didn't like, what they learned, and how they can apply this knowledge or skill set in the future through daily debriefs. And then at the end of the program, the youth receive their goal setting worksheet back. And then this kind of acts as a tool for them to reflect on their experiences and think reflexively and whether their goals and expectations have changed at all throughout the program. We also conduct a survey that measures the youth overall experiences in the program. And because the demographic is newcomer youth, we include different forms of questioning, which includes short answer. We also have scale questions, multiple choice questions, and this is to accommodate the different language barriers because we aren't able to translate all of the different languages that we have. So just making the survey as accessible as possible for them to understand. In the last intake that took place in March, 90% would recommend this program to other newcomer youth. 80% felt more comfortable applying for jobs and have a better idea of understanding work in Canada. 70% feel more comfortable seeking support for their job search, and 90% of the youth met new friends and practiced their English communication skills. And the most important feedback that I have received from the youth is that they have felt more comfortable and more connected with their community. So a lot of the youth who have arrived in Canada, specifically during the time of the pandemic, there was a very high level of social isolation and hesitation to look for volunteer opportunities or to connect with the community. However, in this program, youth felt more connected with their community, to their new living environment, and they even welcomed it. So this feedback form and goal setting and verbal daily debrief all play a role in the program delivery and how to further better the program for the upcoming intake. So for example, in the summer of 2021, a lot of the feedback from the youth was that they wanted more volunteer field trips and less time working on their interview skills. So as a result, I was able to book more volunteer field trips. This is also in part due to less COVID restrictions. And I had shorter sessions surrounding resume writing and job search and had more breaks and fun activities in between to keep them more engaged. The program's retention rate is very high in a way that youth asked to be enrolled in the program in multiple intakes throughout their high school career. So this kind of showcases that it is a sought after program and youth enjoyed their time participating in it. Another thing is that we always are able to reach full capacity for the program, so it's always full. I've been running this program for about 2 intakes now. We've had about 3 youth get a job in the first 5 to 8 months.
So in more smaller communities or more northern communities, I would think a challenge would be finding enough volunteer organizations that are within your area who could offer opportunities and also unique opportunities. Not a lot of organizations have the capacity for a group of 15 or 16 youth to come in to be doing volunteer work because it does require staff time on their end as well. I would say if it is in a smaller city, the main organization would have to take more initiative in organizing volunteer work. So rather than taking the youth to another organization, they may have to organize a group volunteer work on their own, such as a group garbage cleanup or a group collaboration in a bake sale or a fundraiser, but it is doable. I do think this program is transferable for different client groups. We do encourage a needs assessment if the client group is vastly different from newcomer youth. So for example, it could be for single moms or it could be for older newcomer adults. Different things we might change include, instead of maybe volunteer opportunities, it would be potential job placements and maybe adding in childcare if it's going to be for parents, and maybe having different language being translated if English is not their first language. If they are also working professionals that have came to Canada, maybe having information on how to receive Canadian credentials and maybe how to gain work experience in their particular professional sector as part of the workshop, which would be very different from how we're running it with the youth now. But I think the idea of having a series of workshops that tailors to that new clientele and then bringing them out to the community to be engaged and involved and seeing other organizations, that model and that spirit is going to be transferable.
In terms of feedback that I would give other organizations that are looking to implement a similar program, to do their research. So understand the trends within the demographic you are trying to support. I've recently found that many youth prefer fast-paced environments like working at McDonald's, working in Tim Hortons, as opposed to being cashier where you're standing and it's more slower paced. So understanding the kinds of jobs that the youth want, and then catering, for example, like what mock interviews look like, what a resume sample may look like, would better equip the youth when they are looking for employment.
Also seeing if you can find guest speakers to come in and do some of those workshops as well. For Karma Connections, we don't have just one person delivering the workshops. We invite different guest speakers to come in to deliver different topics. So the youth get to see a different face every time, and it's more engaging for them that way as well.
And make it fun. So at times I felt that there was so much content that I needed to share with the youth and go through kind of like lecture style. But what I found out is that when there's less emphasis on the content and more on building connections with the youth, making it more interesting for them, that's what's more important. And it also makes you someone that they can come back to once they are ready to look for a job and they require that support. I do build a connection with these youth because even though they might not need resume support at this very moment, creating that relationship and establishing that bond will help them to be more comfortable to come back to me when they are ready and they are looking for that job for me to support them.